A lot of people think that the Barbie movie is a man hater's paradise, that it's some amazing feminist movie. And on its surface, it would appear that way. But if you look a little closer, you're going to find a movie that paints the protagonist, Barbie, as a woman who needs constant affirmation and to be constantly pushed forward by her compatriots and people that believe in her. She lives in a feminist utopia where women run everything, but every day is Groundhog Day. Barbie wakes up the same. Everybody says the same things to each other. Nothing changes in the world. But then, Barbie's sent on a mission into the real world where she discovers that it's not run by women. And it's in fact a little tug and pull with who runs things. Like a tug of war, if you will. Sort of like the war of the sexes that Barbie was born out of. So, the original Barbie, the toy. So what we find in the movie is we're introduced to a paradise where nothing goes wrong, there's no suffering, like on the surface, and everyone's happy. Our narrator, Helen Mirren, tells us that every day is Barbie's best day. But Ken only has a good day when Barbie notices him. So we're immediately introduced to this sort of flip. When I was growing up, the third wave feminists were telling us that women are oppressed, they don't have the ability to go out into society, the expectations upon women being independent of men in society when they go out that way are ridiculous, that the identity of a woman is entirely based on the man that she either attaches herself to or ends up marrying, right? This is what we were told by the third wavers when I was growing up. So Barbie tries to enforce this upon the Kens. The Kens are a second-class citizenry in Barbie's setting. Now, when we're introduced to this concept, it's very quick. It's very quick. But Barbie passes right by Ken, and you see the defeat and look on his face of just being utterly crushed as she doesn't notice him. Now, he's not doing anything extra special. He's just posing on the beach. But he's clearly invested in her. And this is the symbolism that Greta Gerwig is trying to pass on in this movie is she's trying to express to you that what if the roles were flipped? In this entirely female-dominated culture, where would the men find themselves? And she tries to paint this picture of these physical living accessories, these talking purses of human beings. This is how the Kens are sort of presented in the beginning, that they have no job. Ken himself complains, like Ryan Gosling, the Ken that we follow in the movie, complains that his only job is beach, not the beach or anything involving the beach. He even specifies that he's not a lifeguard and he's not a surfer. He's just Beach Ken. That's it. And we go through the movie with this kind of impression that the Kens are background characters for at least the first act, as Barbie is kind of finding herself through a sudden surge of existentialism. If you're not sure what that is, existentialism is sort of the realization that your existence is either finite or that you've realized that death is something that's going to happen to you. So the purpose of your existence is then suddenly called into question as there's a deadline to figuring that out suddenly presented to you. This is something that happens to children around the ages of like 7 to 13. The realization of self, the separation of the child of mom and dad and becoming Junior or Sally all on your own. But this is expressed in the movie as Barbie suddenly thinking about death. Out of nowhere, she's at a party, they're dancing, having a great time, and then all of a sudden she breaks up the party with asking everyone if they think about death. Now I'm going to fast forward a bit in the movie. Juxtaposed to what this realization is for Barbie at her moment of sentience is Ken's moment of sentience. And this is when a person randomly walks up to him, right? Out in the real world, after Barbie and Ken have departed from the Barbie world and they have entered what is to be our world, a man walks up to Ken and says, "Sir, do you have the time?" And that's all it takes for Ken. "Sir, do you have the time?" That's all it takes for him to arrive at sentience. And what are his first thoughts? That he needs to get educated and find a job. Because what does he do? He goes to the library to learn about trucks, which he discovers horses, and he discovers the book about patriarchy that starts off the whole anti-woman thing that happens in the second act of the movie. Now, with Ken, these are the differences. Barbie, realizing that she's not just another Barbie like the other ones, that she has her own sort of thoughts and ideas that may not be in line with having a best day every day. Hers is a panic that death is going to get her. And that she even goes to Weird Barbie in the movie to complain about this. And she resists taking the journey to the real world to correct the problem with her, right? At first, she embraces, in fact, insists on ignoring the problem. However, when Ken is forced with, I don't know what I'm supposed to be, and he's presented with just a fraction of respect, a fraction of acknowledgement, he's ready to take on the world. This is the mistake Greta Gerwig made. In the way that they constructed and filmed this, the narrative falls apart completely once they leave Barbie Land. Had they kept the story in Barbie Land, everything would have been fine. They could have presented the pros and cons to Barbie Land right there. But because it's in contrast to the real world that really isn't even presented as the 1930s, it just kind of looks like they're complaining. I'll get into more of these details in another video about this, but what I want to underline in this one is that the movie completely misses the effort to make this feminist utopia look great and make these women look powerful. It takes Ken less than 2 hours inside of the movie's own universe. It takes Ken less than 2 hours to convert Barbie Land into a frat boy SNL skit set where they're smoking beers, they're drinking beers. You know, in the movie, they're plastic beer bottles. There's nothing in them. I'm pointing to an invisible one because I'm crazy. But anyway, the Barbies, of course, that were like in places of prominence are now like waitresses and servants to the Kens. And they even express this. They even say, I'm so happy now that I don't have the stress of decision-making on me anymore. One of the Nobel Peace Prize winners expresses that the burden of taking responsibility for her choices is off of her now that the Kens run everything. You hear this on TikTok. You see these TikTok girls that get on there and they complain that this women's suffrage thing is awful. Because of you, I have to go get a job. I can't stay at home all day. And the only thing I had to do was have dinner ready for when my husband came home from work. You hear about that all the time. Sometimes it's a joke. Sometimes it's legit. But Barbie ends up tracking into that accidentally because they've created such a stagnant world where Barbie herself refuses to acknowledge the faults in her own character. Even at the end, she's not acknowledging this stuff. And the ending sets Ken free. Barbie goes off into the real world, certainly, but she gets like a ghost vagina from the creator of Barbie, Ruth, when they meet and talk. There's a light that forms behind Barbie, and all of a sudden she's in a gynecologist's office. She got a ghost vagina. I don't know what that means, but good for her, I guess. And then Ken, his denouement is he's set free. His entire identity through the movie has been based around Barbie. He creates the Kendom to like force Barbie to be with him because he's the leader and he's exuding all of this patriarchal stuff he read in the big book about patriarchy you found. Again, invisible book, sorry. But so he's doing all this to get her attention. And at the end of the movie, she sets him free by saying, I don't want to be with you and that your identity is separate from mine. He even complains. It's Barbie and Ken. There's no just Ken. But through this battle with Barbie ideologically, Ken underlines a problem with young men these days. We do validate ourselves on what women think of us. We do validate ourselves if we are good with the women, as you will. We don't have an idea of what after marriage looks like. Most of what popular media presents to us is just some miserable scene. Think about all the sitcoms you grew up with, right? Where the man is some dangerous idiot and the wife is some angry, frustrated person that has no outlet because she's surrounded by dangerous idiots and children that are out of control. And so what you have is like a male populace that sees in Ken permission, and what it's demonstrated as a modern-looking man, a modern living man, for instance, getting permission to live his life with his own identity. Now, again, Greta Gerwig's mission was to try and flip the roles of men and women in Barbie Land. Now, you heard feminists complain that women shouldn't be defined by their husbands. This is entirely true. Everyone should know who they are before they get married. We have almost a 50% divorce rate in the United States. I think it's time you start knowing who you are before you try knowing who someone else is. And that's Ken's story. That's why everybody's saying Ken has the better story here. Because Ken gets permission to go out and define himself. The last image we're shown of Barbie is that all she is her genitals. That her vagina defines her womanhood. That's how we know Barbie is real, as a real woman, because she's at the gynecologist. That's not. Do you remember feminists, second wave and third wave, all the time? We're not defined by our sex organs. We're not just vaginas. We're not walking fleshlights. You remember this. And what is the denouement of Barbie's story? What is the takeaway? A vagina makes you a woman. What did Ken get? He got permission to go out and figure out what Ken is, who Ken is, why Ken is. And finally, we see him with a shirt that says, I'm enough. I'm Kenough. This is why Ken got the best part of the story. He's the main character. They accidentally made the most red pill pro-manosphere story in hot pink. It's amazing. You should check out hashtag Kenocracy, Kenocracy, over on Twitter, or Xer, whatever it is now, whatever Elon's calling it this week. Go over and check it out. I've been posting over there all these neat memes I've been finding, and, I really think it's a good call to action for men. Ken doesn't demonstrate anything drastically terrible. What he wants is a world with security and a place for him and the other Kens, which, again, as a man, you do feel kind of trapped. There's a track in life that you're sort of trapped into now. The corporations created it, not other men. Corporations told us we had to go out and do A, B, and C in that order, because they're the ones that made the media that reinforced this. So here we are with this story about Ken disguised in a Barbie movie. I'm going to make more videos about this. You let me know what you think in the comments. It's okay if you're not down with the Kenocracy and the Kenstitution and Manifest Kenstony. It's fine. It's okay if you're not down with that. But I really think it's a call to action for young men who have otherwise not known what to do with themselves after they, after they get the prize, if you will, after they do what the television told them to do. Not really sure. I have this saying, and I'll end it with this. The trouble with riding off into the sunset is that it eventually gets dark, cowboy. It eventually gets dark.